A poor single mom falls asleep on a billionaire's shoulder. What happens next will shock you. The security camera on the downtown bus captured it all, a young woman in a waitress uniform, exhaustion etched on her face, slowly nodding off until her head came to rest on the shoulder of the man in the expensive suit beside her. What the camera couldn't record was the moment 30 minutes later when she awoke in horror, or the surprising gentleness in the billionaire's eyes as he handed her his business card with 7 words scribbled on the back that would change her life forever: "Let me help the woman who helped me." Because what Olivia Taylor couldn't possibly know as she stumbled off that bus in embarrassment was that the stranger whose shoulder had briefly been her pillow was Alexander Reed, the same man whose daughter she had saved from choking in her diner just hours earlier, and who had spent the past decade searching for a way to repay a debt much older and deeper than either of them realized. If you're already feeling the pull of this unexpected connection between two people from vastly different worlds, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us how life's most meaningful encounters often happen when we least expect them, and how sometimes the universe has a way of bringing together the exact people who need each other most. Olivia Taylor was exhausted. At 32, the single mother of 8-year-old Sophie had mastered the art of functioning on minimal sleep, stretching every dollar until it screamed, and maintaining a cheerful demeanor through it all. But today had tested even her considerable endurance. Her shift at Molly's diner had started at 5 a.m., an hour earlier than usual because Denise had called in sick. Then the morning rush had been particularly brutal, with a line out the door and several impatient businessmen making their displeasure known when their coffee wasn't refilled quickly enough. By noon, Olivia's feet were already aching in her worn waitress shoes, and she still had 6 hours to go. The lunch crowd brought its own challenges, including a table of teenagers who left a mess and a $2 tip on a $40 bill. But the real drama had come at 2:30 p.m., during the afternoon lull, when a well-dressed man had entered with his young daughter. Olivia had seated them in her section, noting the quality of the man's suit and the designer label on the little girl's coat. Not their usual clientele, but Molly's was the only diner within walking distance of the financial district, so occasionally they got spillover from the business crowd. "Just coffee for me," the man had said, barely glancing up from his phone. "And a hot chocolate for my daughter." "And pancakes," the little girl had added, her expression brightening. "With extra whipped cream?" The father had nodded distractedly, returning to whatever important email had captured his attention. Olivia had smiled at the child, a pretty girl of about 6 with dark curls and her father's striking blue eyes, before heading to the kitchen to place their order. She had just delivered the hot chocolate and pancakes when it happened. The little girl, excited about her treat, had taken too big a bite and started to choke. Her father, still absorbed in his phone, hadn't immediately noticed, but Olivia's maternal instincts had kicked in instantly. Without hesitation, she had moved behind the child's chair, performed the Heimlich maneuver with practiced efficiency, and dislodged the piece of pancake. The entire incident had lasted less than 30 seconds, but in that brief time, the atmosphere in the diner had transformed from routine to terrifying and back to relieved. The father had finally looked up, his face draining of color as he realized what had happened. "Lily. Are you okay?" The little girl, though shaken, had nodded bravely, tears welling in her eyes. "The lady helped me, Daddy." He had turned to Olivia, genuine gratitude replacing his previous distraction. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if..." He'd stopped, unable to complete the thought. "It's nothing," Olivia had assured him, though her own heart was still racing. "I'm a mom. We get a lot of practice with emergencies." The man had insisted on leaving a $100 tip, which Olivia had tried to refuse but ultimately accepted when he'd pointed out that she had potentially saved his daughter's life. The money would help with Sophie's school supplies, which had been the next impossible item on her mental budget. Now, as her shift finally ended at 8 p.m., Olivia was beyond exhausted. Her back ached, her feet throbbed, and all she wanted was to get home to Sophie, who was staying with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patel, until Olivia returned. The bus was crowded when it arrived, but Olivia managed to find a seat near the middle, grateful to be off her feet. She barely registered the man who sat beside her, her mind already at home with Sophie, planning the weekend they would spend together, simple activities that wouldn't cost money they didn't have. As the bus lurched through evening traffic, the gentle rocking motion combined with Olivia's exhaustion proved too powerful to resist. Her eyelids grew heavy, her head nodded forward, then back, and finally, despite her best efforts, she drifted into sleep. She didn't know how long she had been dozing when the bus hit a pothole, jolting her awake. Disoriented, Olivia blinked, then froze in mortification as she realized her head was resting on the shoulder of the stranger beside her. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, straightening up immediately, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "It's quite all right," a familiar voice replied. "You looked like you needed the rest." Olivia turned to find herself looking into the same striking blue eyes she had seen earlier that day, the father from the diner, minus his daughter but still in his expensive suit, though his tie was now loosened and his collar unbuttoned. "You're the waitress from Molly's," he said, recognition dawning in his expression. "The one who helped Lily." Olivia nodded, her embarrassment compounding. "And apparently I'm also the person who falls asleep on strangers on the bus." "I'm really sorry about that." "Please, don't apologize," he insisted. "After what you did for my daughter today, you could use my shoulder as a pillow anytime." A smile softened his features, transforming him from intimidating businessman to something more approachable. "I'm Alexander Reed, by the way. I don't think we were properly introduced earlier." "Olivia Taylor," she replied automatically, still flustered by the situation. "This is my stop coming up," Alexander said, glancing out the window at the upscale neighborhood approaching. "But before I go," he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, scribbling something on the back before handing it to her. "Please call me. I'd like to thank you properly for what you did today." Olivia accepted the card reflexively, too tired to argue. As Alexander stood to exit, he paused, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. "Get some rest, Olivia Taylor. And thank you again." Then he was gone, leaving Olivia staring at the business card in her hand. The front was simple but elegant, Alexander Reed, CEO, Reed Innovations. The back bore his handwritten note, "Let me help the woman who helped me." Olivia slipped the card into her pocket, certain she would never use it. People like Alexander Reed didn't exist in her world, and one chance encounter, or two, counting the bus, didn't change that reality. By tomorrow, he would have forgotten all about her, his gratitude fading as quickly as it had appeared. Her stop was next, and Olivia gathered her things, pushing thoughts of Alexander Reed from her mind. She had more immediate concerns, picking up Sophie, making dinner from whatever was left in the refrigerator, helping with homework, and then preparing for another early shift tomorrow. The walk from the bus stop to her apartment building took 10 minutes, through a neighborhood that had seen better days. Olivia kept her keys between her fingers as she hurried along the poorly lit streets, a habit formed from years of late-night returns. Mrs. Patel answered the door to her ground-floor apartment at Olivia's knock, her kind face creasing in a smile. "There you are, dear. Sophie's just finished her homework. She's such a good girl." "Thank you for watching her," Olivia said, stepping inside to find her daughter curled up on Mrs. Patel's sofa with a book. "I hope she wasn't any trouble." "Never," the elderly woman assured her. "She's a joy to have around. Reminds me of when my grandchildren were small." Sophie looked up from her book, her face brightening at the sight of her mother. At 8, she was the spitting image of Olivia, the same honey-brown hair, the same determined chin, the same resilient spirit that refused to be dampened by their circumstances. "Mom. Mrs. Patel let me help make cookies, and she said I could take some home for my lunch tomorrow." Olivia smiled, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the face of her daughter's enthusiasm. "That's wonderful, sweetie. Did you thank Mrs. Patel?" "About 100 times," the older woman chuckled. "Now, before you go, take some dinner with you. I made too much chicken curry, and it will just go to waste otherwise. Olivia knew it wasn't true. Mrs. Patel always made too much on the days she watched Sophie, but she accepted the container gratefully. It would save her from having to cook tonight, and the leftovers would make a good lunch for Sophie tomorrow, along with the cookies. Their own apartment was on the third floor, a small two-bedroom with mismatched furniture and walls that needed painting, but clean and made as homey as Olivia could manage on her limited budget. Sophie chattered about her day as they climbed the stairs, her energy a stark contrast to Olivia's bone-deep weariness. And then in science class, we learned about the solar system, and I knew all the planets in order because of that book we got from the library, and Ms. Thompson said I was very smart. That's great, honey, Olivia said, unlocking their door. Why don't you get ready for bed while I heat up Mrs. Patel's curry? As Sophie disappeared into the bathroom, Olivia set down her purse and the food container, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension that had built up over her long day. As she did, Alexander Reed's business card fell from her pocket onto the floor. Olivia picked it up, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. Reed Innovations was a major tech company, even she knew that much. Its founder and CEO wanting to help her seemed surreal, like something from a movie rather than her actual life. She placed the card on the kitchen counter, telling herself she would throw it away in the morning. People like Alexander Reed didn't offer help without expecting something in return, and Olivia had learned the hard way not to trust in easy solutions or apparent kindness from those more powerful than herself. After dinner and Sophie's bedtime routine, bath, story, and the special, sweet dreams, kiss on the forehead that had been their ritual since Sophie was a toddler, Olivia finally had a moment to herself. She sank onto the couch, too tired even to change out of her uniform, and closed her eyes. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional sound that had been their ritual since Sophie was a toddler. Olivia finally had a moment to herself. She sank onto the couch, too tired even to change out of her uniform, and closed her eyes. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional sounds from the street below and the hum of the refrigerator. In this moment of stillness, Olivia allowed herself to feel the full weight of her exhaustion, not just physical fatigue from today's long shift, but the bone-deep weariness that came from years of struggling alone. Sophie's father had left when Olivia was 5 months pregnant, unable to handle the responsibility of parenthood. Her own parents, disappointed in her poor life choices, had offered minimal support, making it clear they thought she should have given the baby up for adoption. Olivia had been on her own ever since, working whatever jobs she could find while completing her associate's degree in early childhood education. The degree had led to a teaching assistant position at a preschool, which had paid better than waitressing but still not enough to cover their expenses. When the preschool had closed due to funding cuts, Olivia had returned to restaurant work, promising herself it was temporary until she could find another teaching job. That had been 2 years ago. The teaching positions never materialized, and Olivia had gradually accepted that Molly's Diner might be her workplace for the foreseeable future. It wasn't what she had dreamed of, but it paid the rent and kept Sophie fed, which was what mattered most. With a sigh, Olivia forced herself to get up and prepare for the next day. Her uniform needed washing, Sophie's lunch needed packing, bills needed reviewing to determine which could be paid and which would have to wait. The endless cycle of barely getting by continued, regardless of her exhaustion. As she sorted through the mail she'd collected earlier, Olivia's heart sank at the sight of an official-looking envelope from Sophie's school. Opening it, she found a notice about an upcoming field trip to the Science Museum, cost, $45 per student, due by next Friday. $45. It might as well have been $400 for all the room it had in their tight budget. But Sophie had been talking about this field trip for weeks, excited about the planetarium show and the hands-on exhibits. The thought of telling her daughter she couldn't go was unbearable. Olivia set the notice aside, mentally calculating what she could sacrifice to find the money. Maybe she could pick up an extra shift this weekend, or sell some of her own clothes to the consignment shop down the street. There had to be a way. Her gaze fell on Alexander Reed's business card, still sitting on the kitchen counter. "Let me help the woman who helped me," he had written. What kind of help was he offering? And why did he care about a waitress he had met for all of 30 minutes? Olivia picked up the card again, turning it over in her hands. Calling him seemed presumptuous, as if she were taking advantage of his momentary gratitude. But what if his offer was genuine? What if this was the universe finally cutting her a break after years of struggle? Before she could talk herself out of it, Olivia reached for her phone and dialed the number on the card. It was late, past 10 p.m., and she expected to get a voicemail. Instead, after just 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. Alexander Reed. Olivia nearly hung up, suddenly uncertain. I'm sorry, it's late. I shouldn't have called. Olivia, he interrupted, recognition in his tone. I'm glad you called. I was hoping you would. You were? Olivia couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Yes, Alexander confirmed. I meant what I wrote on the card. I'd like to help you, if you'll let me. Olivia hesitated, pride warring with practicality. I appreciate the thought, but I'm not looking for charity. Not charity, Alexander corrected gently. Gratitude. You saved my daughter today, Olivia. Do you have any idea what that means to me? Lily is everything to me. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and Olivia found herself softening. I understand. I have a daughter too. Sophie. She's 8. Then you know there's nothing you wouldn't do for her, Alexander said. Let me do something for you, as a thank you for what you did for Lily. Olivia sank onto a kitchen chair, suddenly overwhelmed by the events of the day and the unexpected turn this conversation had taken. I don't even know what kind of help you're offering. That depends on what you need, Alexander replied. Why don't we meet tomorrow to discuss it? I could come to Molly's during your shift, or we could meet elsewhere if you prefer. The thought of Alexander Reed appearing at the diner, with his expensive suit and CEO presence, made Olivia cringe. The other waitresses would never let her hear the end of it. I have tomorrow off, actually, she said. But I need to be available for Sophie. Bring her along, Alexander suggested immediately. Lily would love to meet her. We could have lunch at the park near your apartment, Riverside Park. There's a playground where the girls could play while we talk. Olivia was taken aback by his knowledge of her neighborhood. How do you know where I live? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Your address was on your name tag at the diner, Alexander admitted. I noticed it when you were helping Lily. I hope that doesn't seem intrusive. It did, a little, but Olivia was too tired to dwell on it. And meeting in a public park with their daughters present seemed safe enough. Okay, she agreed finally. Riverside Park at noon. Perfect, Alexander said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. I look forward to it. And Olivia? Thank you for calling. After they hung up, Olivia sat at the kitchen table for a long time, wondering if she had made a mistake. Alexander Reed seemed sincere, but her experience with wealthy, powerful men, limited though it was, had taught her to be cautious. People like him didn't typically concern themselves with people like her, not without an agenda. Still, as she finally dragged herself to bed, Olivia couldn't the next day, Olivia hardly slept. Doubts circled her mind all morning. But when Sophie held her hand excitedly on the way to Riverside Park, something inside her whispered, maybe this time, life isn't setting a trap. Maybe it's setting a blessing. Alexander was already there when they arrived. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Lily, and an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Olivia froze. That face. She knew that face. The elderly woman looked at Olivia with trembling eyes and whispered. Emily? Olivia's breath caught in her throat. That was my mother's name, she said slowly. Alexander stepped forward gently. My father left when I was 7. My mother raised me alone. She worked double shifts at a diner, just like you. One winter night, she collapsed from exhaustion while protecting me from a robbery outside her workplace. Olivia's heart started pounding. She survived, Alexander continued, his voice thick with emotion. But we had nothing. No insurance. No help. Except one stranger. The elderly woman began crying softly. A young waitress, Alexander said, looking directly at Olivia, who gave us her entire savings. $2,000. She said, no mother should fight alone. That money paid for my mother's treatment. Olivia's knees weakened. She remembered. Her own mother. Years ago. Helping a stranger. Before she passed away from cancer. That waitress was your mother, Olivia. Silence filled the park. Sophie squeezed her mom's hand. Alexander's voice broke. I built Reed Innovations from nothing. And I've spent 10 years searching for that waitress, to thank her. Yesterday, when you saved Lily, I recognized your name on the badge. Taylor. And when I saw your face, you look exactly like her. Tears streamed down Olivia's cheeks. My mother never told me, she whispered. She didn't want credit, Alexander replied softly. But because of her. I had a future. He knelt down, not as a billionaire, but as a grateful son. You saved my daughter yesterday. Your mother saved my life years ago. Let me finally repay that debt. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a fully paid scholarship for Sophie at the best private school in the city. A job offer for Olivia, head of community outreach at Reed Innovations' New Education Foundation. And a letter. The letter read. Your mother believed no woman should fight alone. Let me make sure you never have to. Olivia sobbed. Not because of the money. But because for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Sophie ran toward Lily. The girls laughed together on the playground, unaware that their mother's kindness had just rewritten their futures. And as the sun set over Riverside Park, Olivia realized something powerful. Kindness never disappears. It waits. And one day, it comes back multiplied. That night, Olivia didn't cry from exhaustion. She cried because for the first time in her life, the universe finally whispered back, I remember.